Thank you to these companies and organizations that make the Before I Die New Mexico Festival possible. A good goodbye. Gail Rubin puts the fun in funeral planning. Compassion and choices, improving care, expanding options, and empowering everyone to chart their end-of-life journey. Daniel's Family Funerals and Cremations, Fairview Memorial Park, Gabaldon Mortuary, Sandia Memory Gardens, and Vista Verde Memorial Park, all in the Albuquerque area. Estate Pros, offering professional dispersal of personal possessions due to a move, illness, or death. The Final Exit Network, educating about and defending the right to choose at end of life. French Funerals and Cremations and Sunset Memorial Park in Albuquerque. Gathering Us, providing in-person and virtual memorial services and online memorial pages. Keeper, providing hybrid and virtual memorial services and keeping memories alive with online tributes to preserve, celebrate, and share life legacies. Morris Hall, estate planning attorneys in New Mexico and Arizona. Remembering a Life, your guide to honoring a life well lived, from planning a tribute to mourning a loved one. And Retirement Extender, investment management services with a personalized strategy recommendation based on your needs and objectives. I am very excited to be introducing our first session with Mandy Benoualid. She is the founder of Keeper, which is, and she founded Keeper in 2013. This is an online social memorial platform that has hundreds of thousands of families using this to share their stories with their loved ones and as many people as they want to share it with. Mandy is also the editor of the consumer-focused death-positive media site, talkdeath.com. And she regularly speaks at funeral and cemetery conferences, and I have known her for years and years through the industry, and so pleased to have you with us this morning, and thank you for your support of the festival. Mandy Benoualid.
Thank you so much for having me, as always, Gail. It's always a pleasure to do events with you. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today on this Tuesday morning or afternoon, depending on where you are. We can dive right into today's topic, which is all about online memorialization. So a lot of you may be familiar about online memorialization, and the goal today is to kind of talk about digital legacies and social media today online and the impacts it has, what happens when you pass away and you have all of these social media accounts and all these photographs still on the internet, and talking about how you can also take a moment to actually start preserving your own legacy and your own memory and your own words. So as Gail mentioned, my name is Mandy. I'm co-founder and president of Keeper. You could check us out at mykeeper.com, and of Talk Death. Some of you know us as Talk Death Daily. That's our handle on all of the social media channels. If you're ever looking for just daily interesting content about death and dying, from grief to green burials, home funerals, political and social and cultural issues and topics around death and dying, that's where you can get your daily dose. So definitely recommend following us if you're not already. And yeah, I thought that I would jump in and start with the founding story of Keeper, and really of myself entering this space, this death care space. And we all have a story. I'm sure every single one of you have a particular story. And mine starts with just visiting my grandfather at the cemetery, as many of us do. And I came across a columbarium, which for those of you that are unaware, it's like one of those glass front niches that holds an urn in it. And this is actually the photograph of it. It contained this blank CD that you can see here, and it said Dad's Files on it. That's obviously an odd thing to see at a cemetery in this type of a space with an urn. Typically it has, flowers and photographs like you can also see. And so I was intrigued, and I did what we're all used to doing when we want to find out information, is I took out my phone and I tried to Google this person's name. Nothing came up though. No obituary, no Facebook page, no photos, nothing. So, it was just such an odd thing to see. And I was so curious what could be on it. Was he an author? Was it his writings? Was he a photographer? Was he an engineer? I would never know the contents of that disc or the story behind this person's name in the monument. All I would know about this man was his date of birth and his date of death and that dash in between. And strangely enough, around the same time, my mentor, Olivier, suddenly passed away. I was on my way to meet him, actually, when I received the phone call that he died suddenly of a heart attack. And we both worked together for a nonprofit called Love, Leave Out Violence. And the mission is to help youth struggling with violence by enabling them to express themselves through media with writing and photography and really storytelling. And when it was time to come together and put a memorial service together for him, as an organization, we immediately looked to the storytelling tools that we had been teaching and educating all of the at-risk youth that we worked with. And one of the first places we went to, of course, was Facebook, because he was very, very active on Facebook. And he would, share a lot of photographs and all of the work that he was doing with these youth. But then when we went there, everything was gone. So I think basically what happened was his family requested the page to be taken down. And at that time, there was no smartphones really. So I'm not that old, but this was quite a few years ago, and I didn't have, any smartphones, any kind of camera phones. We'd have little digital cameras, but it wasn't the same. Even just 15 years ago, it wasn't the same process that we had of just taking a photograph every moment with our phones. So you really did back then look to social media to find these photographs and to store them. And so it was almost like a second loss, where I lost, not only did I lose this person that was very important to my life, but I lost all the photographs and the memories I had with him. And so after those experiences, Keeper was founded, which, as Gail had already mentioned, it's essentially an interactive storytelling platform that allows you to fill in that dash collaboratively with friends and family, with tributes and photographs and memories and genealogy. And really the goal of this was to create a safe space to be able to memorialize a loved one, something that was really dedicated to memorialization, so that when you're going onto the site and you're engaging with it, you're doing so with intention and with purpose. It's not like you're just on Facebook and scrolling through and then, you find your friend's page that passed away. And part of this goal was to help families through this grieving process. And we had done quite a bit of research back then, and it became very clear that the way that we remember and memorialize someone collectively is mostly done by sharing photos and stories and videos. That could be by gathering in a room and doing so, but seeing as our lives have moved so online today, especially with the pandemic, being able to have a safe space to do that online was part of also our goal. And we wanted to spark curiosity. That was really important for us. The goal was to really take that first story I mentioned and be able to walk around a cemetery and learn about every single person in that cemetery. Just imagine being able to walk around and you see a monument that really sparks your curiosity, and you could take out your phone and scan it or search for that person's name and find out who they were and what they did. So fast forward to years later. So we started this in about 2013, and now we offer this to funeral homes and cemeteries. So we actually have we have managed to have to go forth with that goal of making an entire cemetery discoverable. And we more recently, about 3 years ago, also started doing this for the Department of Veterans Affairs National Cemetery Administration in the US. And we now memorialize over 4.2 million veterans in all national cemeteries, as well as state and tribal cemeteries. And that site is called Veterans Legacy Memorial. I'll drop a link after. So if you have a loved one that's interred in a national cemetery, and the state and tribal ones I think are out now, you can find them and write their story and learn about other veterans. And so this is kind of the entire goal and lots of what we'll be talking about today. So let's talk a little bit about this problem that I don't think a lot of us realize is a problem until we go through a loss, that we have to kind of deal with a lot of these digital assets on the internet. So I know not a lot of you are on camera right now, but for those of you that are, you could even go in the chat. How many of you have a social media account? Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all three, right? How many of you know someone that has died and has had a social media account, and maybe even one that's still online? Anybody here? Okay, I'm seeing a few nods. Yep. So this was really an interesting subject to review. Sorry, I'm just going to move this Zoom bar there. Okay, perfect. So in a recent interview with Media, an executive in Silicon Valley estimated that there's actually currently 30 million deceased people on Facebook today. And these are people that are still sending, friend reminders and Facebook birthday reminders, things like that. And in this estimation, he also, looking at the numbers, determined that about 20,000 people die on Facebook every day. So that's about 7.3 million people a year. It's a really large number. Another study out of Oxford actually states that the number of dead users on Facebook could outnumber the total number of living people on the planet in as soon as 50 years. So that would be 4.9 billion deceased Facebook members by 2100. So we're basically looking at like a digital graveyard, so to speak, that is just growing and growing. And if you're more of a Twitter user, I have some stats for you too. Essentially, there's a bunch of math that I can talk about, but it's kind of annoying. So essentially, at the end of the day, the math is that about 613,000 Twitter users die every year in the US alone. So again, this is really just taking into account Facebook and Twitter. And this is a lot of information. This is a lot of people's lives, really, that are online. And, this doesn't include Google and iTunes and YouTube. What really happens to everything that we've shared online after we've died? So I thought it would be important for you all, either for yourselves or if any of you are working with families as a death care provider or a death doula, for example. Here's some important information that I wanted to talk about for how you can actually start preparing for your digital death. Most assume that their loved ones can simply take care of it after they die, but so many platforms actually have really strict rules surrounding this. There can be legal restrictions you may not even realize exist, which could add so much work to your executor and to your family. And there's a pretty popular case, it's a very unfortunate case of Stassen versus Facebook, where their son had committed suicide and the parents wanted to access his Facebook account. And even after the parents obtained an actual court order claiming that they were the heirs of their son's estate, Facebook still refused to disclose their son's personal account information. So it's important to start thinking about this today. So let's kind of dive into a few specifics. Facebook allows for the account of a deceased individual to become a memorialized account upon verification of an immediate family member. This is usually a fairly smooth process, but of course, there's been a lot of instances where this is not the case. And a couple of years ago, Facebook has actually created the option for you to assign a legacy contact while you're still alive so that they can manage your account after you have died. If a legacy contact has not been assigned before someone passes, the account will be memorialized, but there's quite a few limitations. So, no one can respond to messages or tags or friend requests, and content can actually be removed from a memorialized account. So it's really key here, especially again, if you are helping families or even trying to start thinking and planning for your own legacy, to add a legacy contact to your Facebook account. A legacy contact can do the following: that they can change the person's profile picture, cover photo. Okay, great. They can write a pinned post on the timeline, and they can respond to new friend requests. But something that's really important to keep in mind is that if you've left that post that you don't want to be remembered by on your page, it's basically going to be taken with you to the grave unless you completely have your account deleted. So not to like make everyone think that, every single post that you have is going to is going to stay with you for so long, but it's just important to think about these things now so that you can think about what the sort of succession plan is and what you would want with your social media accounts. To talk about Instagram really quick, for those of you that are unaware, Instagram is owned by Facebook, but they do have some different options here. So they offer a similar account memorialization option. However, once an Instagram account has been memorialized, no one can make changes to it. No, you can't change a profile photo, really nothing. It's very, very basic. And no one can log into a memorialized account. The only thing that they do is they remove it from like the explore page so that you can't just be like found. And if you're wondering how you can memorialize account on Facebook or Instagram, you have to essentially contact them. And it can be quite a laborious process. You have to require proof of death first, which would be like a link to an obituary, like on the newspaper or like a funeral home. It has to be like a pretty legit one. And they'll never provide login details. I want to make that clear. And to actually just remove an account, what has to happen is they have to verify you're an immediate family member. Once they've done that and you've submitted the request for removal, you have to, of course, show proof that you're an immediate family member and that the person has passed away. So you need to show like a birth certificate of the decedent, their death certificate, and then even proof of authority under local law that you are that representative. So think of a will, or an estate, something that's actually like a legally binding document. So this is just, not only do you have to go to the bank and handle all of these things when someone passes away, you have to do a lot of this with every single social media account as well. To talk briefly about some other sites, Twitter allows families of the deceased to remove their account, but there's no memorialization options. And once again, you need to contact Twitter directly, and then they provide you with instructions, and then you have to send IDs, death certificates, all of that information. And when you think of TikTok and Pinterest and other social media accounts, it's very similar as well. So all to say that start creating your own succession plan and start talking to your parents or any individuals in your life that you will most likely be responsible for their legacy and their digital legacy, so that you can start planning that with them. A question that we receive a lot is what happens to data and user accounts if a site gets bought out or shut down. So this is a very complex question that we don't have to dive into too much. Essentially, most sites say that they delete your information. But as I think we've all seen in some of the conversations that Zuckerberg has been having with senators, there's even a quote from him saying, I know we tried to delete it as quickly as it is reasonable. We have a lot of complex systems and it takes a while to work through all that. So basically, it can take time, and your information should be deleted, but your information right away is not necessarily safe from, being monetized or harvested. So it's still data that's on the internet, and it's something to just be conscious of and to, again, start planning for. So we talked about this problem, and it's a problem that, especially as we are all online more and more, and just thinking about, a generation younger than myself, the individuals that were born in the 2000s, their entire legacies are online, right? They don't really have the concept of photo books anymore. They don't have the concept of really many physical items. And so some of the solutions that I wanted to talk about that I'm sure many of you are familiar with is online memorials. So of course, I'm with Keeper. We're an online memorial company, but there are many other companies out there that provide these types of online memorial service. And it's a virtual internet space, and it's used in particular to remember, celebrate, and commemorate a family member, a loved one, or a friend that has passed away. Historically, printed obituaries were placed in a local paper so that a community could learn of a passing or find a memorial event information. But today, obituaries have basically or largely moved online. Also because, I don't know if any of you have tried to put a paper obituary, or an obituary in the physical paper, but it's really expensive. It does add quite a large expense to some families. And before, an obituary was just more of a death notice, right? And they were just one person's, opinion, even if there was an opinion of the departed. And now, with the ability to have these types of spaces online, it allows you to really create more of a rich and collaborative space that can be, collectively put together by friends and family. And it allows you to gather and to collectively grieve and memorialize and pay tribute to that person's life. So we're going to talk about a little more of these features and options that you have with online memorialization. So what's really key also is that it's a central hub, so that when someone passes away, their photos, videos, and content are, they're often spread out in all of these social media channels, right? On Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Pinterest. And the idea here is that everything can be essentially curated in one space. And of course, not everyone is on Facebook or Instagram, and it's really hard to share these memories to different people if they're not on all of these platforms, right? Let's say someone who passed away was a huge TikToker, and it was a big part of their life. But then are you going to send your grandma a TikTok video? Not really, right? So these are just some things to consider. And again, creating an online memorial, I'm going to wait for one moment. Creating an online memorial with curated photos, videos, and stories in this one centralized location, again, allows people to communicate in a more central way. And it also means that all this information is being stored in one secure place. And what's really important to think about when you're shopping around for an online memorial service is, are there advertisements? What is the company's policy on data mining and monetization? So the goal is that you find a company that you feel comfortable enough with, where they have a good succession plan, and you can ask where their data is being stored, and if there's any type of data mining or any type of advertisements. Because although most online memorial companies have very good intentions in mind, at the end of the day, they're still businesses. So it's very important to remember all of that. So in talking about preparing for your digital legacy and all of these photographs that are on all of these different platforms and devices, I want us to talk about your digital legacy. So when you prepare for your digital death, it means that you're preparing for your legacy. A digital legacy is essentially all the digital information that's available about you after you die. Again, let's think about that last social media post, like the one that you just did. Is that really how you want to be remembered? Is that really a solid representation of your life? So here are some reasons as to why you should start preparing for your digital legacy. And I just want to put these numbers in front of you because they're really, again, they're very shocking. Every year, the world takes over 1.4 trillion photographs, and we have collectively stored over 8 trillion photographs. Just think about how often you have to empty your phone with all the photographs that you have on it because it's taking up too much storage, right? And the stats that you're seeing on your screen right now don't even include video files. This is just photographs. So on the practical side, your digital death is just as important to think about today as estate planning is, for example. At the end of the day, we're sharing so much of this information about our lives, but there is a lot of noise. And this is where I want us to talk about sort of the next step, which is, why is it important to start thinking about your legacy today? I think that we can safely say that the majority of our memories and in turn, many facets of our legacies today are digital, right? And starting to think about your legacy and starting to curate your digital legacy today is important because it allows you to do a few things. So, and I want us to start thinking about this because we're going to do a little activity at the end. What moments stand out to you and why? Find the moments that are most important to you and have them stored in one place so that you can easily pass them on to loved ones and not have to worry about that in the future. I also want you to think about your life today and think about how you'd want to be remembered. What's most important to you today? And forcing you to think about what's most important to your life allows you to try to remove the rest of that noise and think about what isn't standing out when I'm thinking about my life and the photographs and the moments and the videos that I want to store and pass on. What doesn't stand out are the parts you should probably start spending less time on now, allowing you to focus on the moments that will help you live your best life today. And I'm sure many of you here know this, that when you start thinking about your death, it makes you think about your life a lot more, right? And so this is kind of a fun way to do it, in my opinion. It allows you to really start reflecting on your life and finding those moments and trying to make more of them. Okay, so going back into online memorials a little deeper, some examples that I'm going to show you here are actually from a new release from Keeper that's coming out, but it's not fully available yet. So if you go onto our site, the site won't totally look like this. So you guys are all kind of getting a sneak peek. So an important piece that I want to share with, and a way that you can start a nice page is with a welcome message. So let's say you have an intention when you create an online memorial for a loved one, or even for yourself, which we will get to soon enough. You can either start it with, a favorite quote or a scripture verse, or just a personal message to say, we're here to remember the life of this person. I want you all to share, one memory that has stuck with you, or there could just be a theme that you create that allows you to really curate the online memorial in a way that's meaningful to you and your family. And then fans and family can leave messages and share memories and stories and upload photos and videos as tributes. At the end of the day, though, there's so many different ways that we could tell stories. And to be honest, so many of them are related to different forms of media today, right? So we created a way that you can add a photo story for, let's say you have that one photo of a graduation, for example, or you have an audio story where you have, a voicemail that someone left, an album story for a wedding album. If they were an academic and they wrote a thesis, you could have a document story that shows that where you publish their thesis and that it's available online. So many ways to take these memories and turn them into stories and storylines within the person's life. And you can also add more memento stories with more basic things like what their favorite saying was, what's something that they always said. My grandmother would always say, well, in French, but she would always say, but it's organic. You have to eat it. For some reason, she thought that everything organic was all you like. So for her, that's what I would put, but it's organic. Doesn't mean much to you, but to my family, it means a lot. Other types of stories could be, again, scripture, their hobbies, or even a life map. Were they an avid traveler? Did they travel around the world? And if so, you could put pins of all the cities and all the countries they visited. Did they immigrate from one country to another? So you can show the map of their immigration, or just the way that where they moved and where they lived in the world. And of course, genealogy. Family trees are so important. It's a wonderful way to share with generations where they come from and the history of all their ancestors. But something that's also really important for us today is to realize that not many of us, or so many of us rather, don't have that sort of nuclear family structure, right? So we actually created something called a connection circle. So maybe your family are your friends. Maybe your cousin is closer to you than your sister is. Instead of creating that hierarchy, you can have that circle of people that surround you in your life. And that was important to you. So these are all just different aspects of someone's legacy and of your own legacy, of the memories, the most important moments, those stories, and then the people that surrounded you and gave your life meaning, and you gave their life meaning as well. So these are all beautiful things to remember and to store and to celebrate. On the more practical side, online memorials can also be used to help plan and facilitate and share a virtual, a hybrid, or in-person memorial events. And you can provide all the details of where and when it's happening, links to be able to watch, let's say, a Zoom service, or get to the cemetery for a graveside service. And you can have guests RSVP, and you can see who's coming. And you can even send them all an email or a message. Let's say if there was an important change to the event and you need to tell them all about it. So the idea is kind of taking some of these principles, like, a Facebook event and all of these things that we're used to doing on social media, but creating like one centralized kind of safe hub for this. And another feature of event pages can also be where guests can leave like questions about the event and comments about the event. Should I bring flowers? Should I bring food? Things like that. So it's all just a way to help you kind of manage some of the work that you have to do, but in, again, that sort of safe space. Something that, of course, I'm excited to talk to you all about, that we mentioned in the title of this talk, is about creating your own legacy now before you die. So it's not just about your loved ones that have passed away. It's thinking about, how do you want to be remembered? And that you can be remembered in your own words, with your own stories, and curate your own life story. And Keeper and I'm sure a couple of other applications out there provide this service, where you can start finding all those most favorite memories and start adding them now online. And you could even keep it private until you pass away, so that it only gets published once you pass away. We do have this feature being used very often for terminally ill patients, where they want to start receiving messages and memories from individuals before they die. It goes hand in hand with like a living funeral that I'm sure many of you have heard about, where someone has a celebration of life before they actually die, so they can be part of it. Why can't we be part of our own life celebration, right? So this is all part of this this way of working through your own legacy. And it could be key moments, trips, life events, so much that you can just start slowly working on. And what's important about this concept and online memorials in general is that the person that creates the account is essentially the administrator of the page and of that person's legacy. So you'll see this in a lot of different sites and applications as well. What we call it is you're the keeper of the person's memorial page. So that's the term that we use internally. And what's really key with this is that you're the keeper of the person's memorial page you create, but then you can assign a keeper to your account. So the idea is that everything gets passed along and that there's always someone responsible for that digital legacy as time goes on. So for example, my sister is my keeper and I'm my sister's keeper. So that way, regardless, depending on which one of us passes away first, we are able to hold on to each other's accounts, and we're the ones that are able to manage it for each other. And this is a very similar concept to when you are creating your own living memorial page, that you need to assign a keeper or an admin to your own living memorial page so that when you die, that person can take control of your page and change it from a living memorial to a memorial. So again, this allows these accounts and the information to really live on through generation, regardless if the person has died. And so this is where we kind of take some of these social media principles and make them a little more secure so that you don't have to worry about that in the future. What's going to happen to everything? You've already designated that person. I like this quote about legacy. I thought I would read it for you all. The idea of legacy may remind us of death, but it's not about death. Legacy is really about life and living. It helps us decide the kind of life we want to live and the kind of world we want to live in. So what I want us to do is I want us to start thinking about our legacy today. And here's a little interactive part of this talk. So I invite you all to have the chat window open now. And I'm going to ask you just a couple really basic questions, and we'll give everybody a minute for each question. And I would like you just to think about this and write out your answers in the chat. If you don't feel like sharing, write them down on a piece of paper and store them somewhere so that you can remember. So let's all start thinking about our own legacy today. So the first question, what 3 words would people use to describe you today? Or what 3 words would you describe yourself as today? Think about the good, think about the bad, be honest. And, even if you're not necessarily happy with words that come to mind, that's okay. This is all part of the exercise. So I'll give everyone a minute to just think about that for a second. What are some words that you would use to describe yourself? Okay, we're starting to get some answers. So let's kind of use that as a stepping stone to the next question. What picture would you share of one life-changing event or achievement? What is one moment that stands out? And even if you don't have a physical picture, paint a picture in your mind. What would be one life event that really changed you, that made an impact on you? Let's explore this why. What are these moments that you're thinking of? And you can write down or describe the photograph or the event in the chat if you'd like to participate. Okay. Gail, you always have the best answers. Showing grandpas in the tough shed at Frozen Dead Guide days. Love it. A picture of my haunted house. Ooh, love that. That's actually probably what I would do too. When I asked the question earlier of, would you want that last photograph to be how you remembered? The last photograph I did was of the haunted house I built for Halloween. And that's kind of actually how I would want to be remembered. So maybe that was a good question. I'll give everyone else just a minute to think about this. Changing life event or a life achievement, something that affected you. And I see some of you are writing it down as well. That's great. Who would be in a picture that represents the people that matter most to you? Again, you may not have this photograph, but you can create a photograph or write it down. Because as we get older, certain people, they don't stand out or become as important. And I think many of you will have probably noticed this as you've gotten older. The ones that stick, the ones that are really staying in your memory, that's a good indication of the ones that you should continue to focus spending your time and energy on. And it's amazing how sometimes it's like maybe 3 people, right? You think that you have, 30 people in your circle, but there's only a couple that really stand out, that if you could only choose one photo, those would be the people that were in it. Ooh, someone has a twin. Awesome. And you see, at the end of the day, it often comes down just to family. And again, I want to be clear that family doesn't always mean blood relatives. Okay, thank you everyone for sharing. And we have one more. What words of wisdom would you want passed on to your grandchildren? Try to imagine sitting down with, your great grandchildren, or a young child, maybe a niece, for example. What advice or wisdom would you want to leave them with? If you find yourself stuck, think about one of the biggest struggles in your life, something that was hard that you went through, and what that taught you. Adding advice and wisdom to your legacy can really bring comfort to those you leave behind, and future generations can really kind of inherit something meaningful. And, this is really about lessons learned, lessons that you can actually remind yourself of every day. Oh, we're getting some great ones. Why should you ever be afraid? Don't work so hard. Make time for joy. Find yourself, be yourself. Don't go to bed angry. That's a good one. Stay positive and honest. Look for the good in things. Oh, these are all so wonderful. Be good to yourself and be good to humanity. I love these. These are all so inspirational. I'm going to need to screenshot all of this and save it. So I leave you with this one slide. The power of a person's life is the stories they leave behind. So again, just thinking about legacy. So I encourage you all to start thinking about and start building your legacy today, to go back to the digital side, organize your digital assets, protect them, and share them, because you're only going to be able to share them in the future for when you die. And if you don't organize and start protecting them now, then it's not going to be as great for those you leave behind. So yeah, I welcome you to start doing that. And we do have a bit of time left. If anyone has any questions, please do ask. And if not, I will put in my email and our website in the chat, and you're always welcome to email us and ask us questions when you think of one.
Thank you, Mandy. Oh, that was amazing. In fact, I was sitting here taking some screenshots of you and your slides and posting them on social media saying, have you thought about legacy context for your social media? That's such an important point.
It's something that I think a lot of us take for granted. And I mean, I even do it too. I can't see it. I started building out my online memorial, my living one. And I try to take literally, it could be 2 hours once a year to just write out, okay, this is what I accomplished. This is what I'm proud of. These are important moments that happened in my life. And reflecting on a yearly basis is just an amazing way to help guide the rest of your life and thinking about the legacy you're going to leave. So it's a very, I think journaling has become much more popular today. So this is kind of a way to take an overview of your whole year. So something I really recommend.
And one of the things that I've been doing for a few years on Thanksgiving, when, everything's closed and I wasn't cooking, was to update my spreadsheet of passwords, usernames and passwords, which I keep on an Excel file spreadsheet, because the passwords, usually you have to change them. And it's a resource for your loved ones to find out, oh my God, what do I have to do to shut down this person's online life?
Yeah. And like what we talked about was like literally just touching on social media. Think about all of the other types of accounts and services that you're using online, right? It's a very big list. And there's actually a couple sites out there specifically to help you with your digital assets and like your digital accounts. I'm trying to remember one of the names, but
Oh, yeah, LastPass or
yeah, LastPass is great. I use LastPass for all my emails and for all of my passwords. It's a great tool. Absolutely. Yeah.
now, are those secure? I mean, can you trust them not to get hacked?
So LastPass, I think, is actually owned by Microsoft. So LastPass is one of the most secure ones. And if you don't like having your information, if you're someone who, like my husband, who doesn't like, corporations, there's a lot of good open source ones. And yeah, I mean, it is secure. So even a lot of people don't realize this, but like even like just Facebook or any account you're using with a password, the people that like run the website, the developers, most of the time they can't actually find your password because it's encrypted. And so a lot of people don't realize that a lot of this data is actually encrypted in the database, meaning that even people that run the site can't have this information. And this is really key for data security. So password savers are a really good way to save it because, and yeah. So, and again, as mentioned, Facebook and a lot of these companies will not let you share the information. They won't give you any logins. So someone
And
actually mentioned that Dashlane is a good password saver. So thank you for sharing that. And a virtual and hybrid service. Just talk about that really quick. So Keeper actually provides virtual and hybrid services. A virtual service means that everybody is online. So it would be sort of like what we're doing today, where every single person is online. It's multiple people all online at the same time. A hybrid service typically means that there's an in-person service going on. And in COVID times, it would be like a small gathering of people in a room. And then you would have people that are online virtually as well that are watching and maybe participating. So it could be like two-way or one-way.
you know, it's interesting. When I first wrote A Good Goodbye, Funeral Planning for Those Who Don't Plan to Die, I wrote about social media and Facebook and, you know, what happens to your accounts. And there have been services that have kind of come and gone about, you know, we can help you shut down, you know, or your loved one shut down your accounts. Do you know the status of those kind of services with the industry?
Honestly, not so much. What would normally happen with those types of services, because even though you're a service, it's basically just like hiring someone to kind of do the communication for you. So a service like that would be asking you for death certificates, estates and wills, IDs, and then they would essentially contact these all of these different accounts on your behalf and then have them shut down with the right proof. So to answer your question, Gail, I don't know of a company that's actively doing this, and probably a good thing for us to even add to our roster of services because it's something that a lot of people are experiencing today.
Yeah. What was that number again of Facebook users who have died and
It's
Twitter?
about 30. Oh my God, now I'm gonna like
Oh,
forget. It's a total of like 30 million. It's a lot.
30 million
And
Facebook
yeah,
users have died. Oh my God. And
yeah,
yeah, I'm still seeing, you know, wish so-and-so a happy birthday. It's like, they're
yeah.
dead.
I know. And what's crazy if you think about it is they in like under 50 years, they're projecting that there's going to be more dead people on Facebook than living.
Oh my God.
Like that's a lot. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's one small question in the chat. Oh, what's the fee for Keeper services? So online memorials at Keeper, it's $75.99 or $74.99, $75 US for a lifetime fee. So you'll see similar service fees like that from other companies. Again, we do this so that we don't put advertising or mine any data or give any data to marketers. And so other companies similar to us that offer such services, some of them will have monthly plans, some of them will have yearly plans, and some of them will have lifetime plans. So they're all kind of in that range. And so it's quite affordable. And again, it's just a way to ensure that your information is secure, is in one place, is collaborative and is not being mined for marketers.
Now, is that your cemetery product? Why don't you talk a little bit about that? The
Yeah,
QR,
sure.
still doing the QR code?
So we actually started with QR codes like way back in the day in 2013, where you put like a QR code on a monument, and we kind of got popular for that reason. Funny enough, we stopped doing it. We stopped kind of offering that as an actual product that we would sell. We would sell plaques, and it was mostly because QR codes kind of were they were overused and people were just so over them. But now they've made this resurgence in the pandemic, which is super interesting. So you go to a restaurant to get a menu, things like that. It's really made a resurgence. So we've started to have requests again for QR codes for monuments. So it's something that, we may offer, but to be honest, if anyone is interested, QR code generators are free on the internet. You can take a link, throw it in a QR code generator, and you can print it on a plaque yourself. So for us, it would be something that we would add to like just help families go through that process, but it's something that you can do really easily yourself. So if let's say there's like one funny video that like you want everyone to see that goes to your tombstone, you could just link that to a QR code and have that pop up. So technology makes things really interesting today, lots of options.
Yeah.
And on the cemetery side, yeah, so we have like more of an enterprise solution. We actually have a small business solution for people like death doulas and just death care workers, anyone who's helping guide families through that process. So we have like an account service for smaller businesses, and then we have more of an enterprise solution for funeral homes and cemeteries. So those prices are different depending on the company. Small businesses, it starts at $140 for you to create a business account with us. And for cemeteries and funeral homes, it's more complex because sometimes we have to take hundreds of thousands of cemetery records and import them into our system. And we do mapping so that you actually can get walk to grave directions. So let's say you're going from home to a cemetery. Cemeteries are very large and confusing. And our mobile app gives you walk to grave directions. So it'll actually tell you exactly where the person is. So we do really cool projects like that with death care providers so that, again, we can make these spaces much more discoverable and really just focusing on the story and not just on that date of death and that date of birth and dash in between. And you really have no information about the person's life.
That's great. I think we need that for historic Fairview Cemetery.
Yeah, there's so many and it's amazing. I mean, I'm sure many of you have done this, but just going on cemetery tours, it's so fascinating. So the goal is that you can just kind of do your own cemetery tour whenever you feel like it.
Exactly. Yay.
I left our info in the chat, so feel free to email us directly or even go onto our website to learn more.